The Judgment Hour. The Archean Council chamber loomed before them like a cathedral designed by mathematicians with a taste for intimidation. Concentric rings of seats rose toward a domed ceiling that displayed a real-time view of the cosmos, including the growing void that threatened their empire. Marcus stood beside Zephyra in the center of the chamber, acutely aware of the hundreds of Archean eyes fixed upon them. She was in formal diplomatic armor, white with gold accents that marked her former rank. He wore his dress uniform, feeling woefully underdressed for what might be their last day alive. "Remember," Zephyra whispered, "speak only when addressed. The Council values decorum, protocol, and looking down on lesser species." "Got it." Marcus. "Sorry. Nervous humor. It's a human thing." Arbiter Thyra rose from her seat in the first ring. "This emergency session of the Imperial Council will now commence. Commander Zephyra, you stand accused of treason, theft of military assets, unauthorized contact with primitive species, and conspiracy against the Empire. How do you plead?" "I plead necessity," Zephyra replied, her voice steady. "Everything I've done has been in service to our survival." "By consorting with humans?" General Vex spat from his position among the military advisors. "By abandoning your post during our darkest hour?" "By seeking solutions our traditional methods cannot provide," Zephyra countered. "The void consumes 17 systems. Our weapons, our science, our strategies, all have failed. I sought a new perspective. And found it in this?" Vex gestured dismissively at Marcus. "A primitive who talks to machines." Marcus felt his temper flare but remembered Zephyra's warning. He remained silent, though his clenched fists betrayed his frustration. Thyra raised a hand for silence. "You claim to have made progress. Present your evidence." Zephyra activated a holographic display, showing their research over the past months. "The anomaly behaves unlike anything in our experience. It doesn't destroy, it negates. It doesn't conquer, it erases. Traditional approaches fail because we're fighting the wrong battle." "Explain," another counselor demanded. "The void isn't an enemy or a force. It's an absence. A growing silence in the fabric of reality itself." She brought up Marcus's communication logs. "The human noticed patterns our sensors missed. His unconventional methods revealed the void responds to certain frequencies, not weapon signatures or energy patterns, but communication attempts." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Marcus caught fragments: "Impossible, absurd, waste of time." "You're saying we should talk to nothingness?" Vex scoffed. "I'm saying we should listen," Marcus interjected, unable to stay quiet any longer. All eyes turned to him. "Sorry, I know I'm not supposed to speak, but this is important. Your whole approach assumes the void is an attack. What if it's a message?" "The human speaks out of turn," Vex growled. "This proves Zephyra's corruption." "Let him finish," Thyra commanded, her 4 eyes studying Marcus intently. Marcus swallowed hard. "In Earth's history, we've encountered phenomena we couldn't understand. Sometimes they were natural, sometimes artificial, but the breakthrough always came when we stopped assuming and started observing. Your void doesn't behave like a weapon or a natural disaster. It behaves like a signal looking for a receiver." "Based on what evidence?" Thyra asked. "Based on this." Marcus gestured, and Zephyra brought up their latest findings. "The void expands in pulses that match no known energy signature but do match the mathematical concept of prime numbers. It avoids inhabited worlds until they attempt to communicate with it using weapons. It responds to certain electromagnetic frequencies by pausing its expansion." The chamber fell silent. Even Vex seemed taken aback. "You believe the void is intelligent?" Thyra asked. "I believe it's trying to tell us something," Marcus replied. "And every time we shoot at it, we're essentially hanging up the phone." "This is preposterous," Vex declared. We're wasting time on human fantasies while our empire crumbles. I call for immediate execution of the traitor and deportation of her pet primitive. Seconded, called several military advisors. Thyra looked to other council members. The scientific contingent will speak. An elderly Arxian with pale blue armor stood. The human's theory has merit. Our own research confirms the pattern recognition. We've been too focused on defense to consider communication. But can we risk our survival on such an untested hypothesis? Another asked. The debate raged for hours. Marcus watched as factions formed and reformed, arguments growing heated. Through it all, Zephyr remained steady beside him, occasionally squeezing his arm when tensions rose too high. Finally, Thyra called for silence. The council will vote. Those in favor of executing Commander Zephyr for treason? Hands rose, mostly military, some political. Marcus counted frantically. Too many. Those in favor of clemency pending further investigation of her research? More hands, but still not enough. The vote was deadlocked. Thyra turned to Marcus. The decision falls to an unusual circumstance. Human, you inserted yourself into our politics. Now accept the consequences. Cast the deciding vote. The chamber erupted in protest, but Thyra's glare silenced them. The law is clear. In deadlock, any recognized diplomatic entity may break the tie. The human claimed such status. Let him prove it. Marcus felt the weight of every eye upon him. This wasn't just about Zephyr anymore, it was about the future of their entire civilization. Before I vote, he said slowly, I want to ask one question. What happens if you're wrong? If you execute Zephyr, destroy her research, and the void continues to grow? How many more systems will you lose before admitting your approach isn't working? Silence answered him. I vote for clemency, Marcus declared. And more than that, I volunteer to help test our theory. Send me to the edge of the void. Let me try to communicate with it. If I fail, you lose nothing but one primitive human. If I succeed, you could save us all, Thyra finished. She looked around the chamber. The vote carries. Commander Zephyr is granted conditional clemency. Her research will continue under council supervision. The human's proposal is accepted. Vex stood abruptly. This is madness. You doom us all with your weakness. Perhaps, Thyra replied. But at least we try something new. Council adjourned. As the chamber emptied, Zephyr turned to Marcus, her armor shifting through a spectrum of emotions. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. Volunteer for what might be a suicide mission. Someone once told me the universe favors the bold and the foolish, Marcus replied. Besides, I couldn't let them execute my favorite alien captor. I stopped being your captor months ago. Then what are you now? Before she could answer, Thyra approached them. You have one chance to prove your theory. A science vessel will be prepared. You leave in 3 days. After she left, Zephyr's hand found Marcus's. Are you certain about this? No, he admitted. But I'm certain about you. About us. Whatever we are. Whatever we are, she echoed, and for the first time since they'd met, she removed her helmet completely. Her face was angular, beautiful in its alienness, with patterns of bioluminescence tracing her cheekbones. Wow, Marcus breathed. Is that a positive response? Very. She leaned down, had to, given their height difference, and pressed her forehead to his. The gesture felt intimate, meaningful in ways he didn't fully understand. Together, then, she asked. Together, he agreed. They stood there in the empty council chamber, forehead to forehead, human and Arxian, preparing to face the void that threatened everything. The future was uncertain, their mission likely impossible, but somehow, none of that mattered. They had each other. And sometimes, that was enough to change the universe. A new horizon. The science vessel Luminance hung at the edge of the void, its sensors straining to comprehend the nothingness before them. Marcus stood on the observation deck, Zephyr beside him, both staring into an absence that seemed to stare back. Last chance to call this off, Zephyr said, her armor in its most minimal configuration, a sign of trust he'd learned to recognize. No one would blame you for changing your mind. Except me, Marcus replied, adjusting the specialized communication array they'd spent the last 3 days building. It incorporated both Arxian technology and principles he'd developed from talking to satellites. Besides, we've come too far to back out now. The void stretched before them like a wound in space itself. Stars simply ended at its boundary, their light swallowed without trace. Yet Marcus could see what others missed, the subtle patterns in its expansion, the mathematical rhythm that suggested intelligence rather than destruction. Commencing transmission sequence, he announced, fingers dancing over controls that combined human intuition with Arxian precision. Starting with prime number pulses, just like we discussed. The array hummed to life, sending carefully modulated signals toward the void. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, impossibly, the void's edge rippled. It's responding, Zephyr breathed, her 4 eyes wide with wonder. The ripples formed patterns, complex geometries that shifted and evolved. Marcus adjusted the transmission, adding harmonics based on his communication theories. The void's response grew more intricate, more deliberate. It's beautiful, he whispered. Like a conversation in mathematics. Hours passed as they established increasingly complex exchanges. The void wasn't a destroyer, it was a doorway, a bridge to something beyond their understanding. It had been trying to make contact, but every aggressive response had been interpreted as rejection. Marcus, Zephyr said suddenly, look at the stellar readings. He glanced at her console and gasped. The consumed systems weren't gone, they were transformed, existing in a state neither fully material nor energy. The void was a cocoon, preparing them for something new. It's not destroying your empire, Marcus realized. It's trying to elevate it. To help you evolve beyond physical limitations. Their breakthrough transmission drew the attention of the Council. Ships arrived, military vessels with weapons powered down, science craft bristling with sensors. Even General Vex maintained a respectful distance as they witnessed the impossible, a human and an Arxian communicating with cosmic transcendence itself. Days of negotiation followed, not with weapons or demands, but with mathematics and music, with concepts that stretched the boundaries of understanding. The void revealed itself as an emissary from civilizations that had long ago transcended physical form, offering the Arxians a choice, remain as they were or join a greater cosmic community. It was Zephyra who made the final decision. We need time, she transmitted. Time to grow, to change at our own pace. Will you wait? The void's response was immediate, a subtle contraction, a patient withdrawal. It would wait at the borders of Arxian space, no longer consuming but observing, ready when they were ready. In the aftermath, as celebrations erupted across the Empire, Marcus found himself alone with Zephyra on the observation deck. You saved us, she said simply. We saved us, he corrected. Your vision, my weirdness. Together. Together, she agreed, then hesitated. Marcus, I need to tell you something. The real reason I chose you. Beyond my sparkling personality and talent for cosmic phone calls. She smiled, a full, unguarded expression he'd grown to cherish. When I first monitored your communications, it wasn't your problem-solving that caught my attention. It was your joy. The way you found wonder in malfunction, humor in failure, hope in impossibility. That's just how I cope with a ridiculous universe. Exactly. The Arxians had forgotten how to find joy in uncertainty. We'd become rigid, afraid. I needed someone who could remind us that the unknown isn't always a threat, sometimes it's an invitation. Marcus felt his throat tighten. So when you said I reminded you of what your people had lost, I meant wonder. Curiosity. The courage to be foolish in pursuit of understanding. She touched his face gently, her fingers cool against his skin. You didn't just help us solve a crisis. You helped us remember who we could be. What happens now? He asked softly. Now. She gestured to the void, which pulsed gently at the edge of space like a patient teacher. Now we have choices. The Council has offered you citizenship, a position as special advisor on interspecies communication. Or. She hesitated. Or Earth's governments have been contacted. You could go home, return to your old life. And the third option? The third option is we take this ship and explore. Find other civilizations facing similar challenges. Help them discover new ways of thinking. Her armor shifted, revealing vulnerability. Together. Marcus looked out at the stars, at the void that no longer seemed threatening but full of possibility. He thought about Earth, about his old life monitoring satellites and making bad jokes to empty rooms. Then he looked at Zephyra, warrior, rebel, partner in the impossible. You know, he said, I never did ask you properly. That day in the archives, when you showed me Kirix's memories. I asked why you chose me, but I never asked the more important question. Which was? Not why you chose me then, but why you're choosing me now. After everything we've been through. Zephyra's 4 eyes aligned, a gesture of complete focus he'd learned meant absolute honesty. Because you make me laugh. Because you see solutions where I see walls. Because you treat the universe like a conversation partner rather than an adversary. She paused. Because somewhere between your terrible jokes and impossible theories, I fell in love with you. Marcus felt his heart skip. Even though I'm a primitive chaos monkey who talks to machines. Especially because of that. She leaned down, pressing her forehead to his in that intimate Arxian gesture. So what's your answer, Marcus Chen? Earth or the stars? He wrapped his arms around her, feeling her armor warm beneath his touch. The stars. Always the stars. With you. Even if it means more sarcastic AIs and judgmental mops. Especially if it means that. They sealed their decision with a kiss that transcended species, a promise of adventures yet to come, of mysteries yet to solve, of a universe that suddenly seemed far less empty. Months later, as the Luminants departed for uncharted space, the ship's AI, now affectionately dubbed SAS Protocol, made one final observation. For the record, I predicted this outcome within 97.3% probability from your first interaction. No, you didn't, Marcus called from the navigation console. I did. I simply chose not to mention it. But I'm glad my biological components finally achieved emotional clarity. Zephyra laughed, the sound filling the bridge with warmth. Set course for the Kelvar Nebula. I hear they have a communication problem with their stellar nurseries. Course laid in, Marcus confirmed. Ready when you are, Captain. Together, she asked, though they both knew the answer. Together, he agreed. The ship leaped into the vast unknown, carrying 2 unlikely partners toward a future neither could have imagined alone. Behind them, the void pulsed once, a farewell, a promise, a reminder that sometimes the greatest discoveries come from being willing to listen to the impossible. And somewhere in the space between stars, a human and an Arxian continued their conversation with the universe, proving that the most powerful force in existence wasn't weapons or technology, but the simple willingness to understand. The void had taught them that. Now, they would teach it to others. One impossible solution at a time.